Welcome to the Australian Weight Loss Surgery Podcast, where every 2 weeks we explore all the aspects of the weight loss surgery journey. You'll hear from a range of experts including bariatric surgeons, psychologists, patients and dietitians sharing up-to-date informative advice to help fast-track your long-term weight loss success.
Welcome to the Australian Weight Loss Surgery Podcast. Today we are running a little special episode of a bit of a commentary on some recent articles we found in the news, which are addressing the issue of stigma around obesity and overweight in our population. And one article in particular has quoted that some obese patients are waiting up to 9 years to reach out for help, which we find is astounding and then leads to those comorbidities and the other problems that are related to obesity. And finally, we're realizing that obesity is not more of a exercise more and eat less issue, much more, there are many more drivers than that. So today I thought we'd talk about these articles and overall kind of explore the idea of stigma and what society is doing around that at the moment. And my guest is Shannon Taylor, who is a previous bariatric patient. So he's a great voice of reason in that area, but he's also got a great voice in that community around, dispelling the stigmas around overweight and obesity, as well as kind of alerting the masses that perhaps bariatric surgery is not the easy way out. So welcome, Shannon. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me again, Jacqui. And I still am a bariatric patient. So happily still a bariatric patient. 3 years out, but yeah, still living the dream.
That's good. And we're always excited about watching your progress and your support of the community and the voice you are. So that's why we've got you here today. So the two articles we were looking at, one was from the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, talking about breaking the cycle of shame and blame for obesity. I won't go into the word for word of the article. The other one was in the Nine News on March the 5th, where one of the people that were interviewing was saying that she felt embarrassed to go to her GP and get some help. And that was sort of where it led into talking about how long it takes for some patients to either reach out for help or actually be offered help. They go to their doctor for other things in the meantime, but are we addressing this issue? Now, what are your thoughts on that, Shannon?
Well, it's funny, ever since you put that towards me, I've had mixed reviews on it. I've been sitting on it, pondering on it and trying to think my way through it. And I'm on both sides. One, because I think it's one of those things we need to, especially at bariatric patients, when you do finally make the decision to want to have bariatric surgery, you want to be approached, you want to sit down and have the conversation and not feel, judged. But then also on the other hand, it you don't want people to put it forward to you because we don't want to feel like, we have an issue. We don't want people to, to sit down with our GP and then them to be like, oh, I think you need to have weight loss surgery. So I think with weight loss surgery and bariatric surgery, it's very important to make that decision for yourself. So I am torn between the two, but I definitely feel there needs to be more education, especially with GPs, to understand the complexities of what goes in behind bariatric surgery. I think that's definitely a point that needs to be brought up for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, I suppose, do you feel that there's enough support or understanding of obesity in itself? We hear, again, the same as you, I hear both sides of that. I hear people looking for help and going to their doctors and being told to exercise more and eat less, when obesity is not as simple as that. And it's a big puzzle that's, pieces together to bring about that end result when someone's, grossly overweight. Are they going to the doctor and being told to exercise more and eat less? Or are, they're going to the doctor and the doctor's saying, hey, I can see that you're getting, your weight is going up each time I see you. Is there anything we can do to help you? Was that ever put forward to you for other reasons when you went to the GP or, different places that you visited for other health reasons? Was it brought up or was it not talked about very well?
So I think that was one thing my GP did really well. Like, I've had my doctor for a very long time, and he didn't push it before it was needed to be pushed. So he kind of said it at the point that I was in that part of, I'd ran out of things to try. And he put it forward as not just he put it through as like, there is another option. It's something you can look into. It wasn't so much as the first option. It was the last option.
Yes.
Which I think when he put it forward to me, put it forward in a way of, maybe consider this, not this is what you need. So I think with my GP, he definitely put it across in a way that resonated to me and made me take those steps to consider it. And you kind of said this before, I think one thing we need to really understand is even bariatric surgery's come a long way, but it still has a long way to go, and we're constantly being educated on it. And I think one thing that needs to be focused focused on is the education around obesity in general. And, I've talked to a few people about that, and putting a face to obesity and understanding that not every case is the same. Very important, because the more people I sit down with, the more people I talk to, I understand there's things that led them to get to this point, which means to unravel that big ball, you need to approach it differently than everyone else. So, to unravel one ball, it's lots to do with mental health and issues revolving around food. And it's one of those things. Everyone's different. I think education has still got a long way to go, but by people taking small steps a day, it's eventually going to get us there.
Yeah, correct. And I think that's right. I think we're starting to recognise that it's a mental health issue as well as genetics and also environment, education. It's a range. I always say that obesity is 100 things all pulled together for that end result, and surgery is one of those. And so looking at the other components of what has, ended, what has gone on to leave that person in this predicament with their health. Do you think GPs in general are given enough information to know how to approach the subject of weight and overweight with an obese patient?
I think it comes down to a case by case. Some GPs, yes. Some GPs, no. Like, for example, Lita and I, we had a conversation the other week about her GP sitting down and approaching her in a way that made her feel very uncomfortable about it, and he was very closed-minded to it, which led her away from it, which now we can see the proof's in the pudding. It was what she needed, and she approached another GP who was quite educated in the subject and pushed her in the right direction that she could take those steps. So I think, yes, some are, some aren't. But I think it's a case of just the people that aren't, just being open-minded enough to push them in the direction of someone who may be.
Yeah, correct. And I think, it comes down to the GP. Also, their general practitioner, they see 150 different things in practice every day. So we can't expect them to be across everything, but to kind of be able to guide you and, to know, I suppose, when the time has come. What do you think can be done to normalise the fact that obesity is not a choice? It's a combination of factors that lead a person down that path.
Yes, I was talking to, I can't remember who it was. There's a charity to do with obesity the other week, and they have a really good approach to it, and they're more trying to put a face to obesity. So I think that's the one thing, like when most people in society who don't deal with being obese see an overweight person, they just automatically go, eats too much, doesn't exercise, lazy. There's certain stereotypes they put towards that person where it's not always the case. Like someone may be active, they have a relationship with food for certain reasons. And I think by approaching it in the way of an individual subject rather than a mass, stereotype, it's going to help break that stigma, because it's going to help people the more people I sit down with, the more I sympathize with people who suffer with obesity and go through this whole process, because case by case, you start to break it down and understand what led them to where they're at, rather than just looking at them as just another overweight person.
That's right. We're looking at the end product rather than what the causative factors are. Yeah. And I know in your podcast weekly, you interview many different bariatric patients. And so you do get to see the different, realm of different impacts that start this ball rolling and get them to that point where, some people have had an accident at work and they've been quite active up until that time and, quite fit and healthy, but something will floor them and then they're on steroid medication and then they're gaining weight and then they can't exercise. And so those things, and then those people are getting looked at as, oh, you lazy thing, you're overweight, but without knowing the full backstory. And I think that's where we need to get to, is we are a story and we're not just this end product that's got me to the point where I'm, I need surgery to help me to recover from that. We are complex beings.
Yeah. Even with childbirth is a big one. A lot of people that within bariatric community as your childbirth, the most beautiful thing there is, but it's unfortunately, when you develop certain patterns or habits, it's really hard to break those. And I think that's when you break a lot of people down. It's just habits that develop over a long period of time. And that's why I say with bariatric surgery, as much as it's an amazing tool, you have to be willing to start breaking those habits down. And it's not going to happen over the first year where you lose all that weight, because you develop these habits over, in my case, 30 years.
That's right.
So it's going to take me a lot more than 2 years to break all these mini habits down and start undoing them.
And I think speaking about that, people are supported really well for the first year, which we call the honeymoon period. I don't know if you refer to it as that. It's you're not hungry, you're losing heaps of weight, you put it in your portion bowl, you eat it. But the next year is when there's not as much support and when that kind of hunger returns and those habits can start to sneak in. And I think that's when we need a bit more of an understanding about what people need for the long term. And I do see a lot of patients are not 100% aware of this whole lifetime commitment to these habits and this new way of running your life. And I also think that the expectation after surgery is to turn your life completely upside down. The way you eat, the way you think about food, the way you have to understand food, how much is protein. Some people don't even know what protein is before they have the surgery. And we're expecting them to know know what a meal is made out of. So the learning curve is ridiculously steep. And then we're like, off you go, and good work, you're losing weight. And, there's a whole lot of different factors that are, that speaks to. I know you're a big advocate for removing the stigma from being overweight, as well as the choice to have weight loss surgery. How can we be more instrumental in spreading the message that being obese is not always a choice?
Well, I think we're slowly getting there. And I had a word to my surgeon about it the other week. The social media side of things is definitely helping with it, because more people that put their story forward and help others understand, not just the case that they're losing weight, but it's changing their life, it's helping them. It's slowly breaking that stigma, because it's kind of like, alone we're strong, together we're unstoppable, because it's like the more there are, the more people start to understand that, hey, this isn't just saving life, creating life, and I think the biggest part is like why I want to break the stigma. It's not so much I don't want to push people to have bariatric surgery and be like, you should do it. It's more making them feel comfortable with making that decision when they finally get to that point. And I think that's a big key, because I don't want it to be so normalized and mainstream for people that it's a first option. They're choosing it over trying a diet or trying a different change to their lifestyle. They're still using it as a last case scenario, but they're feeling more comfortable with their decision.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think also when you look at revision surgery, when we talk about this 2-year point where bad habits have slipped back in and weight gains, starting to happen, and then people are like, should I have more surgery? And that's a time for another sort of intervention with education and exploring what that patient is experiencing, what their mindset is, what their eating habits are, before, they automatically think about, well, I need more surgery to help with my weight gain, because all the surgery in the world is not going to fix that if the habits are not solidified. And that is, I think, where we could do better, is with education and support and ongoing input from professionals if the need arises. And some people sail through it, they do a great job, but a lot of people are lost. And I think that's where we would get a higher long-term result from the surgeries if we could support a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's not even just to the outside of we talk about education to others, GPs, blah, blah, but it's like within the bariatric community, I think we need to really focus on education, because I know for me, for example, and other people that I've seen go through this bariatric surgery, the people that approach it with, it's a fresh start, it's a new beginning, it's a chance to re-educate myself, usually end up doing better, because they're kind of wanting to make those changes. They're wanting to approach this differently than they have in the past. Where you see people who are justifying bad decisions 2 or 3 years out when they're starting to regain weight and they're starting to be like, I'm putting on this weight, this is normal, and stuff like that. That's where, you need to kind of say, hey, is this just turning into another diet? It's now your chance to sit down and start to try and break yourself down, because it's very hard. We all have egos, and we never want to be wrong, and we never want to do things wrong. But I think especially within bariatric community and being overweight and obese, we need to say, hey, we haven't done things right. Now's our chance to sit down and actually break ourselves down, understand it better, and start making those tiny steps. It's not going to be huge overnight. It's not going to be I think that we're in society these days, we want that instant reward. We want that instant gratification for something. And I think with bariatric surgery, we need to approach it like, yes, that first year you're going to get a lot of that sense of I'm doing what I need to do, I'm accomplishing what I want to accomplish. But you got to understand 2 years out, 3 years out, it starts to slow down, and you start to have to really deal with those issues head on. And the more you do in that first year, the easier it's going to be, because you do have those little habits kind of help you out while you still establish who you are. So I think it's really important to look at that first year, yes, for the weight loss, but also look at that first year as your mental freedom to understand what you need to change and where you need to head and what direction you need to push yourself in order for this to be a long-term solution.
Yeah, wow, that's great hearing from you as well. And just on that note, where would people look for this information support down the track when we see people are 3 years out, 2 years out, and they're still, they're getting hungry and their habits are slipping back in again? What would you see as a good place to, get support in that time?
Well, I think that's why we're very lucky, and the more that it goes on, the better it gets. Whether it's, the BN Bariatric page has great information, the Instagram community has great support, it has great information, some good, some bad. Your surgeon, you can't go wrong. They get paid the big bucks for a reason. Talk to your nutritional team, talk to whoever it is that they recommend, because they understand it from a different angle, but a better angle sometimes than what we will. I think also sometimes it's just a case of you're going to have the best answers for yourself. There's nothing better than self-reflection, especially if you're approaching it with an open mind to understand that you do have things to fix, because every day has lessons if you're willing to see them, whether it's, eating because you're bored, not hungry. If it's little things like that over time will eventually turn into big things if you're willing to sit there and understand that they're lessons and not just, it's just day by day. If you're willing to break yourself down and understand things from a different angle, you're always going to make progress in the right direction.
Yeah, correct. And it's, self-reflection and looking at.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. Like, honestly, it's like sometimes, I that was the biggest thing I always say is the best thing I ever did was lose my ego and start to understand that maybe I am the issue. Like, I have issues,
Did you
no
just
one
say
wants
that?
to be. Yeah, but it's like, I know I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. And I think as soon as we sit back as soon as we sit down and we start going like, hey, I have an issue. What is that issue?
Yeah.
Or I don't know the answer. It's a really powerful position for someone to be in because you're in a point of learning. You're in a point of education. You're in a point of, a deviation in the road where you're actually maybe heading in the direction you should have went in the first place.
Yeah, correct. And I think when we look at the statistics, obesity or overweight and obesity increased from 63% in 2014 to 67% in 2017. There's a lot of us who are not getting it right. And I don't think it's something we should be embarrassed about. I mean, we've got the food industry ramming food in front of us that really, they're trying to bring in the sugar tax again. I heard that today, which is interesting. But the foods we are offered at the supermarket, if you don't have a degree, you could pick up something and think it's healthy, and you're running, your day on it, and it turns out that it's full of sugar. So I don't think people should feel beaten by the fact that they got to where they are, because it's all stacked up against us the minute we walk out the door now with advertising and, product placement and social media and all that sort of stuff. We've got the pressure to eat all this yummy food that's on offer, but then we've got this perfection, that's showcased on Instagram and Facebook of all these beautiful young bodies that are, also unattainable. So the battle in the head is also, I don't know how many people feel on top of their nutrition, because it's just it's very complex, and and I think there's some of the labeling that's in a subtle way a bit misleading. And unless you know that, you could think you're doing the best thing for yourself, and away you go and you're putting on weight. So how frustrating.
It is.
I think, with 67% of the population are in that boat.
Yeah, understanding like food is a really complex thing. Like Ali just worked out what amino acids are, we're not all, dietitians or nutritionists. So, when you look at a nutrition label, like I put so much focus over the first year or so on protein, but I didn't understand, what it actually did to my body and what other things would work alongside of it. Like, I think, it's a very overwhelming world when you come to food. And if you're looking at labels and like, oh, it's 99% fat free, yes, it's 99% fat free, but it's also a lot higher in artificial sugars and other things to make you want more of it, because, we live in a world where they want you to buy more of it. So,
exactly.
It's usually the most bland, untasteful stuff by itself is usually the stuff that has the less additive to it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, with the human brain, we like that, we like taste, we like that stimulation and relief. So,
absolutely. So it is, it's, we have to walk out the door and keep saying no, no, no. And if you're not the kind of person who can say no all the time, not only that, obesity is, all of your endocrine system is out of whack and your hunger is turned on to 1,000%. Just, you just never feel satisfied. And that's a genuine condition. It's not that you're just greedy or you want lots of food or you're always, sitting there eating. It's because you genuinely don't feel full. And then we've got all the food in the food courts that are really supporting it. So it is a complex issue, and it's lovely to see in the news that we're slowly pulling it together and actually looking at how long it's taking for people to reach out and get help, and hoping to speed that process up as well. And
no, it is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it is a really good thing to see, because it's like, as much as you mentioned the statistic about obesity going up in Australia, the one statistic I keep looking at is the success rate of people who have bariatric surgery. That's a big statistic for me, because that tells me we're heading in the right direction if people make that decision. So yes, obesity is going up, but by having an understanding that, there is something that could assist you, and then also understanding that it's not as easy as signing a piece of paper, having your stomach cut out or whatever, having your plumbing changed, and understanding that there's more after it. That is telling me through the statistic of more people being successful and not regaining after bariatric surgery, that we may be heading in the right direction with education and support and different things like that.
Yeah, well, even in the last 10 years, there wasn't even a multivitamin that was suitable for weight loss surgery patients. So they were given pregnancy multivitamins or standard multivitamins. And then, years down the track, they were like, oh, we've got bone density issues and all that sort of stuff. So there's research going on all the time now, which is really speaking to, how to manage these people after they have had the surgery, which I think is, we're only going to we're getting such great information all the time, which is quite interesting. So thank you for discussing the stigma around being overweight. And I really appreciate your time and reflection and your honesty around letting the ego go and mind, opening up your mindset. So good on you.
No, that's all right. That's what we're here for. I appreciate you having me on, and the more times I can sit down and talk to people and understand, different situations and put because I honestly, I have this conversation for no other reason than I want to try and pass on the smallest lesson, if possible, that I've been able to, understand from my own journey. So, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. And you can catch Shannon and his lovely partner, Alita, on the Barry Banter podcast. And we share those in our group in the BN Bariatric page on a weekly basis. And they're stories that, it will highlight the fact that everybody's journey is different, and it's well worth a listen. Thanks, Shannon. It's been great. Take care.
Thank you, Jacqui.
Thanks for listening. And just before you go, we would love to hear your feedback. So please give us a rating and review. For other interesting topics of conversation and inspiration, come and drop into our Facebook community at BN Bariatric. If you've enjoyed our podcast, we hope you will share on your Facebook or Instagram and hit subscribe so you'll never miss an episode.